Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
As the last of the reported Ebola cases here in the U.S. are being given the all clear, we're getting reports of Ebola cases on the rise in Western Sierra Leone. They're reporting more than 20 deaths a day occurring there. And in lieu of a travel ban, new restrictions on air travel are going to see travelers coming from Ebola-stricken countries restricted to just 5 U.S. airports. This will start Wednesday. Travelers who are coming from any of these Ebola-affected regions will have to land in New York, Chicago, Newark, Washington, and Atlanta. They'll have enhanced screening procedures, which include taking temperatures, inquiring about travel history, and looking for symptoms of the disease, which that doesn't seem very enhanced to me. And of course, there is no word yet on any monitoring that they're going to be doing for these travelers once they leave the airport. Now, not only does Obama's new Ebola czar not have any medical training, he's also a big fan of population control, which Klain called a top leadership issue that's challenging the world today in a recent interview.
I think the top leadership issue challenging our world today is how to deal with a continuing growing population in the world and all the resource demands it places on the world, and burgeoning populations in Africa and Asia that lack the resources to have a healthy, happy life. And I think we've got to find a way to make the world work for everyone.
If everybody's raising living standards to the point where everybody's got a car and everybody's got air conditioning and everybody's got a big house, well, the planet will boil over.
So, of course, that's only going to add fuel to the fire, as a lot of West Africans are putting a lot of mistrust in the government being there in the first place. And now some scientists are saying that Ebola can go airborne, but it just hasn't in West Africa because it's too warm. Now, these are referring to 2 studies by U.S. Army scientists that show Ebola can spread by air in cold, dry weather, which is common to the U.S. A 1995 study entitled Lethal Experimental Infections of Rhesus Monkeys by Aerosolized Ebola Virus. It reported Ebola virus sensitivity to high temperatures and humidity, which is what you'll see in southern Sudan and northern Zaire, may have been a factor that's limiting aerosol transmission of Ebola virus in the African epidemics. Both elevated temperature and relative humidity have been shown to reduce aerosol stability of these viruses. Now, the study also referred to the 1989 Ebola outbreak at a primate quarantine facility in Western Virginia, and this is where the virus rapidly spread between unconnected rooms. Interesting to note that that study took place in December of 1989, where it's likely that temperatures in Reston were below freezing. And this study is also similar to another one that was done in 2012, which exposed monkeys to an airborne filovirus, which is also similar to Ebola. And it concluded that while no strong evidence of secondary transmission by aerosol, they say it is possible in lower temperatures, which are not a factor in these warmer climates. So this study also points out that they have stability in aerosol form, which is comparable to influenza. And the Pentagon obviously took this threat of airborne filoviruses so seriously that it organized a medical countermeasures workshop with the Department of Health and Human Services in 2013. So here they're saying it is possible it could go airborne. It just needs colder temperatures, lower humidity, like we'll see in, I don't know, New York. But scientists working on weaponized Ebola. Where have we heard this before? Well, how about season 1 of The Walking Dead?
You know what this place is? We protected the public from very nasty stuff. Weaponized smallpox, Ebola strains that can wipe out half the country. Stuff you don't want getting out ever.
So obviously that's a little bit of fun there, thanks to one of our fans on Twitter that pointed us to that little bit of predictive programming. But let's be honest, we all know that the creators of The Walking Dead are just conspiracy theorists. Now, investigative journalist and former NSA contractor Wayne Madsen told Press TV on Monday that the militarized response to this Ebola crisis in West Africa was a little bit suspicious. And he said the latest Ebola outbreak may also be a resurfacing of an earlier infection that's linked to the CIA. Madsen said that we see a year when the U.S. was violating a Senate law forbidding the U.S. from engaging in a civil war there. Then they saw Zaire being used as a bait for the CIA. And then you saw the outbreak of Ebola there. And this is the same year that George H.W. Bush was the director of the CIA. And then in 1980, we saw the outbreak of HIV in Zaire and Angola, where the CIA was operating. And he said, what we need to see is an investigation of how intense the CIA biological warfare program was in Zaire and Angola between 1976 and 1980. And what has hit in Sierra Leone and other countries is the Zaire strain of Ebola. Now, Madsen said the militarization of the U.S. Ebola effort in West Africa is suspicious, saying it's very peculiar that the U.S. is sending the military in when obviously health workers, doctors, and other healthcare professionals are what is needed. And while other media outlets are there trying to downplay the Ebola outbreak, and they're in a flurry trying to discredit sites like Infowars, who would dare suggest that Ebola has been studied for its use as a potential bioweapon, know this: CIA and U.S. military involvement in testing for biological pathogens as weapons is highly documented.
Introducing the first proprietary oxygen-based intestinal cleanser, OxyPowder, backed by FDA-approved phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. All the toxins from the air, the food, the water, ultimately ends up in the gut or affects the gut. Take your health into your own hands and start cleansing your body today with OxyPowder. Secure your OxyPowder today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.